This is Gemara Baba Basra Daf Kof Ayin Vav, an exciting day. Baruch Hashem in the world of Daf as we wrap up. I don't think you ever wrap up, but as we reach the end mark of Mesechas Baba Basra, the longest Mesechta, 176 Daf, quite the journey. Just think about when we started before the summer. Absolutely wild. B'siyata d'shmaya once again. We like to dedicate all the incredible schus ha'Torah, the schusim of Talmud Torah keneged kulam, Talmud Torah birabim, as an incredible schus for Tinok ben Miriam Ahuva b'siyata d'shmaya. The continued learning should bring this incredible baby continued refuah shalema b'karov mirza Hashem. So we're holding on Kuf Ayin Ham and Beis. We're in the middle of a wonderful discussion when you could collect from Mishubadim. The Mishnah taught us that a milva bishtar gets from Mishubadim and not a milva alpeh. The Gemara started off with a fundamental machlekes between Ula and Rabba. We have diametrically opposing opinions. Ula taught us that midaraisa everything really should get from Mishubadim, but midarabanan we don't allow a milva alpeh. Rabba said the exact opposite. That midaraisa no one gets from Mishubadim, and only from Bnei Chayrin. And why? Because Shibuda lav daraisa. Ula holds Shibuda daraisa. According to Rabba, because Shibuda lav daraisa, no one should really collect from Mishubadim. The reason why we allow a milva v'mishtar to get from Mishubadim so that people continue lending money. Based off of that, asks the Gemara, approximately 14 lines to the bottom. The first one in line is Umi on Kuf Ayin Ham and Beis. Umi Amar Rabba Hachi. Does Rabba really hold this? But asks the Gemara, Ve'amar Rabba Gavu Karka Yesh Lai Gavu Ma'is Ein Lai. Regarding a Bechar, the Bechar's rights to get Pishnayim, to get the double portion of the father's estate, and particularly in the halva and alone of the father's estate. Said Rabba, if the Yarshim have karka, then Yeshloi. The Bechar gets Pishnayim, gets a double portion. Ein Loi, if he doesn't have karka, gavu ma'is, if they don't have karka, just rather ma'is, then what? Ein Loi, he does not get Pishnayim. So what does this show us? This shows us that on a daraisa level, it is considered that there was a shibud. The Rabbi is clearly learning that the land collected by the Yarshim is, yes, considered to have been mishubad, and that is the reason why, if there's karka, the Bechar gets pishnayim. But the problem is, but Rabbi just taught us shibuda lav de araisa. So suggest the Gemara of a chiteman, if you're going to come along and teach me, epach de Rabba le'ula le'uda de Rabba, as we commonly find throughout Shas, that let's switch up. Let's flop. The Rabba and Ula, we just had the wrong shitais. Says the Gemara, that doesn't work either. Why? V'amar Ula has taught us Dvar Torah Bal Chayiv Dinei Biziburius. Ula has taught us a halacha. Where do we have this? We have it in the beginning of Baba Kama and in Gittin as well. That Bidaraisa Bal Chayiv only gets from Ziburius. What is the reason? Because Ula clearly holds that there is a Shibud De'araisa, so you can't switch around the names. Ella, so rather concludes the Gemara, Rabba Taima Deblei Marava Kamar, that when Rabba came along and said the din about the Bechar, it was not his own reasoning, and rather Rabba was sharing the reasoning of the Bnei Marava, but Rabba himself, of Alayla, Svira Rabba does not hold of such, and rather Rabba holds, like he originally taught us, Shibuda Lav Da'araisa. Continues the Gemara, quoting other opinions on this matter. Ravu Shmuel Darmi Tarvayu, Milval Beina Goyveloy Mina Yarshe, Meloy Mina Lakuchais. Why? My Taima, Shibuda Lav Da'araisa, just like Rabba held. For Rav Yechon of Reish Lakish Darmi Tarvayu, Milval Pe Goyve Mina Yarshe, Mina Lakuchais. My time, Shibuda Daraisa. So the Gemara quoting that the machlekes Rabba and Ula is really a machlekes Rav and Shmuel versus Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Asks the Gemara, Meisvei, 2 lines from the wide lines. Someone digs a pit in Rosh Hashanah and Afal of Shar v'Hargai, and an ox falls upon him in the pit. So he is in the pit. The ox falls upon the person digging the pit, the hargai, and kills him. Potter, the halacha is that the owner of the ox is potter. And not only that, listen to this one. Imagine, Reuven is in the middle of the street digging a pit. He's in the middle of the street. Don't forget, he certainly should not. It's not the right thing to be doing, but he is. And an ox walks by, falls into the pit, and kills Reuven. The owner of the ox is potter. And not only that, continues the Gemara, if the shar himself dies, the yarshim of the balabar, who are mourning now, the father that was killed by the shar, they are obligated to pay demei shar libailov. So what do we see? We see even though this was clearly not a milva bishtar, there was no recorded loan over here. This whole story was a case of accident, was a case of obligation to pay due to circumstance. And yet we see you're able to collect from the Yarshim. So asks the Gemara, Ravu Shmuel, what did they say? They said a milva al pay, no goyim in a Yarshim. But we see here, you could get from Yarshim. So Amar Rav Illa, Amar Rav, Amar Bedin, the case is referring to where the Baal Habar went to Bezdin, was found to be Chayiv. And therefore, because he was found to be Chayiv, therefore the Yarshim could collect because it's something that was an obligation of Bezdin. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. It says he was killed. How can you tell me he was Amar Bedin, Amar Rav Ada bar Ava, Sha'asa Treifa? Didn't really kill him entirely. He made him a treifa. He was still alive, and therefore they stood trial. Asked the Gemara of Amar Rav Nachman, Tani Tana Meis V'Kaivroi. But the Bryces learned that what? He died and it buried him. So clearly he was not a treifa. Clearly he did not live through the ordeal. Answers the Gemara, the Dayanim came to the place of the bar, and as the person was sitting there in his death throes before he died, they obligated him to pay, and therefore his Yarshim subsequently are going to have to pick up the tab and pay. And based off of that, we turn over to Kafayin Vav Amar Aleph. Comes along the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa lays down the law. Says Rav Papa, Hilchasa, what's halacha? Milva al peh, Gaiva min ha-yarshim, ve'ino gaiva min ha-lukuchis. Gaiva min ha-yarshim. Why? Kadesh lo teladels b'fnei lav, and a similar reason that we don't want to close the door before borrowers. We want to encourage people to borrow, and therefore, even though the halva was made al peh, you get from Yarshim. But ve'ino gaiva min ha-lukuchis. Why? The Leslie Koluk Slomaisin no one knows about it, and therefore there's no way to protect the buyers. We continue 5 lines down. For the next case in the Mishnah, if there is a text, an IOU of someone's handwriting, it says he's obligated. Halacha is we collect from the chasim and ichayr. Ba'yimine Rabba Barnasan Merav Yochman. Hochsik as avyadei bebezdin mai. If one's handwriting is authenticated, is Huchsak in Bezdin, what is the halacha? Do we say that because it was Huchsak in Bezdin, it gets the status of a shtar, and therefore you could, yes, collect from Mishubadim, or not? Amar le Rav Yochanan responds, Aval bi Huchsak savyadu bebezdin, a guy ve'elu menuchasa b'nei chayr. Masiv Rami bar Chama, comes like Rami bar Chama, and he asks in Rav Yochanan, we have a Mishnah at the very beginning of Gittin that teaches Shleisha Gittin Psulim, 3 Gittin of a puzzle. But in this case, the Vlad will be kosher, it's possible, but it won't be puzzle enough to puzzle up the marriage. That subsequently happens. Veluhain, cause of Saviyad, if someone's written with one's own handwriting, they don't love Eidim, there's no Eidim. Or Yesh love Eidim, there are Eidim, Vein Boizman, or Yesh Boizman, Vein Boizman, Harelu, Shleisha Gittin Psulim. Then this says Havlad Kasher. Says this Mishnah. Rav Elazar Aimer says Rav Elazar. Afal bi shein olav edim. Even though there are no edim, ela shenasla bifnei edim. But the shtar was given in front of edim kasher, and yes, the government chasim mishubatim. So ask the Gemara, what do we see from Rav Elazar? We see that when something is given over b'fnei edim, that gives it the power of a full-fledged shtar. So to by us, something that was huchzik bebezdin should give it over the power of a full-fledged shtar, and you should be able to collect from a mishubadim. Answers the Gemara, shiny awesome. Why? The mishas ksiva, who deshiba nafshe. Because at the time of the ksiva, he is mishabed himself. And therefore, that is the reason why, according to Rav Elazar, when it is given over in the case in Gittin, that is the reason why Rav Elazar allows you to collect from Nechasim Mishubadim, but that would not translate over into our case. We will take one moment at the Rashbam, a lengthy Rashbam over here, but he spells out Kishay Nichtav Ashtar Nichtav K'dei L'Masar B'fnei Eidim. That was his whole intent. Shiu Eidei Mesira B'Makom Chasima. Again, in the world of Gin, he could have given it over in front of Eidim instead of signing the Eidim. And therefore, I'll give the Rav Elazar Eidim Mesira Karti Rav Elazar of the opinion that the whole kriyasus, the whole severance of a get, happens via the Eidim Mesira. It's as if there are Eidim in the Shtar dummy. And therefore, that's why you got from Mishubadim. But our case is a regular Ksav Yadai Ba'alma, a regular IOU that someone wrote. The name of the leiva is written in it. And that's in the place of admitted. So you cannot deny later on by that I paid you because it's not a regular star with the edim, but rather it's an IOU. After some time, they pull it out in Bezdin, and Bezdin verifies that this is indeed his handwriting. The Rashbam so eloquently spells out for us that in the case of Gain, al Dasgain, he wrote it al condition that he's going to give it over in front of Eidim Misira Karti, and therefore gets the taik of a full-fledged cat of a full-fledged start. But by us, that wasn't the case at all. By us, the case was a classical IOU. Subsequently, it's proven to be verified in Bezdin. But of course, says the Gemara, that's not a kasha. You'll not be able to collect from Mishu Badim. We continue with the two dots, almost at the middle of the Amit. Said the Mishnah Din of and Arif. Omar Rav says, Rav, koidem chitim shtarois. What was the case in the Mishnah? The Arif signed la'achar chitim shtarois. That's what we said. You do not collect from the Mishubatim of the Arif. But says Rav, let's say the Arif signed before the signing of the shtar. Then, says Rav, koivim menachasim Mishubatim. La'achar chitim shtarois, then koivim menachasim b'nei chayrin. Zimnim Rav, that's what Rav would normally say. But at times Rav would say, Afilu koidim chitim shtaroi, still ain't a goiva ella minachasim b'nei chayr. But says the Gemara, what exactly do you mean that sometimes Rav said this and sometimes Rav said that? Kasha de Rav ade Rav. Says the Gemara, I'll explain to you exactly what's going on. Loi kasha, why? Ha de kasebe ploini arev, ha de kasebe u ploini arev. A minor nuance, a little vav. But says the Gemara, the second case, when you only get from B'nei Chayrin, even if he signed before the Chitim Shtaris, is what? The Kasabei Pliny Arif. The second case, when he said you would yes be able to get when it's before the Chitim Shtaris, is he said, U Pliny Arif, connecting the Pliny, connecting the Arif with the Eidim, and therefore it will create the Shibud on the properties of the Arif. That's the Shita of Rav. So it depends. The Vav connects the Ariv with the Eidim, then yes, it will go for Mishubadim. If not, not. And even if the Chsiv Be'u Pliny Ariv, Rav Yochanan disagrees. Masiv Rava asks on Rav Yochanan, Eidim achatum mal she'il shalom beget. If Eidim are signing on the greetings that appear in a get, the husband inquires about the welfare of his wife at the end of the get, and the Eidim followed these greetings, some extra wordage that's placed within the get. Puzzle, why? Because we don't know. Do these Eidim sign on the get or on stam this, beautiful greeting, these salutations? Again, Rav Yochanan. She'ilu pasal v'she'ilu kasha. That these are pasal. That if he says she'ilu, inquire, it's pasal. She'ilu, that critical vav, then it's kosher. So asks the Gemara, we see that Rav Yochanan himself is masking that if you add on that vav, it connects it. So why not by us? Says the Gemara, hachanami. So too, we have to say Rav Yochanan is talking about the Kasvei Pliny Arif. Yachi hainu de Rav. Ema v'chein amar Rav Yochanan. So concludes the Gemara. Indeed, Rav Yochanan is not arguing Rav. He's just saying the same din as Rav. Or we conclude the final din, and therefore both of them will agree that there's going to be this massive chilik. How one vav will change everything. There will be this massive chilik if What if it said, connecting the Eidim with the Ariv or not? Ariv with the Eidim, I say. Ma'aser balav nei Rabbi Yishmael, we conclude with the final part of the Mishnah. That the whole story with Rabbi Yishmael and Ben Hanis. Omar Rabbi Chanam Rabbi Yochanan v'alpi shekilis Rabbi Yishmael Ben Hanis. Rabbi Yishmael gave Ben Hanis these incredible praises, these wonderful accolades, and still, halacha ka'maisa, we paskin like Rabbi Yishmael. Says the Gemara, so how does Rabbi Yishmael respond back? Yibayalu bechina bechanuk. Mali Amar Rabbi Yishmael, in that case, in the case that someone is strangling someone, and the other person comes along and says, I'll pay you back. How does Rabbi Yishmael paskin in that case? Tashema Dam Rabbi Yaakov Am Rabbi Yochanan Cholik Rabbi Yishmael Af bechanuk. So says the Gemara, and in that case, halacha k'maisai in halacha k'maisai. Do we pass like Rabbi Yishmael? In that case, says the Gemara, or in halacha k'maisai. Tashema proves the Gemara 6 lines to the bottom of the Chazar Rav and Rabbi Yochanan Cholik Rabbi Yishmael Af bechanuk. Halacha k'maisai Af bechanuk. Am Rabbi Yehuda Am Rabbi Shmuel Chanuk v'kanim yadai. That's a different case. If someone is strangling someone, and the person says, don't strangle him, I'll pay him back, I'll pay back for him. And they make a kinyan. Says the Gemara, v'kanim miyadei, they make a kinyan sudar, then mishtabed. Then that creates a shibud. Says the Gemara, v'chal dari ba'alma loy ba'i kinyan. So the obvious implication is that Dafka on this unique case that he made a kinyan. Sounds like a regular Ari would not need a kinyan. It says the Gemara, Pliga de Rav Nachman, this is in difference, this is arguing Rav Nachman, the Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman holds, as we turn over to the final Amud over here, says Rav Nachman, Arev de Bezdin, and Arev in Bezdin, who delay by a kinyan. Only if the Arev is in Bezdin is when there is no kinyan. Alma. In a regular case, says Rav Nachman, you need a kinyan by a kinyan. Ve'elchasa, what is the halacha, says the Gemara? Arev b'shas matamois loy by a kinyan. But achar matamois, when indeed by a kinyan, it depends when the Arev gave his guarantee. If he committed at the time the money is given, then you do not need to make a kinyan to concretize his commitment. But if money was already given, then you do indeed need a kinyan. But Arev de Bezdin loy by a kinyan. Why? Why is an Arev in Bezdin different? Because with that hana, the mehemin lei gomar umishabid lei. Because with that hana, that one gets from the fact that Bezdin trusts him, from the fact that he's able to give over himself in front of Bezdin, and Bezdin now looks at him as this trustworthy individual. That hana, that is what's going to allow him to do what? That is what is going to allow him to create this shibud. Concludes the Gemara that's going to be the chilek, whether the kinyan is made there or not. And there it goes. Hadron aloch get pashit. We must turn back to this perek of Baba Basra. Ubshita pashit uslikala meseches Baba Basra b'siyata d'shmaya. An incredible accomplishment. 175 lat. The longest mesechta in Shas. Siyata d'shmaya, it should be an incredible schos, and it should push us further on our journey through Shas. B'siyata d'shmaya, looking forward to continue learning with everyone. Mazel tov.